The 2026 Formula One season is coming, and a lot of drivers are not happy about it. The new regulations bring massive changes to the cars, and many of the sport's top drivers have been very vocal about their concerns. They're saying the cars won't be as fun to drive, they'll be more complicated, and the racing might not be as good as what we have now. Let's look at what the drivers are actually saying about these changes and what it all means. First, let's talk about what's changing. The 2026 cars will have significantly less downforce than the current generation. We're talking about a 30% reduction in downforce. That means the cars will be slower through the corners, but they'll be faster on the straights because of increased electrical power. The new power units will have a 50-50 split between the internal combustion engine and electric energy. That's a massive change from what we have today. There will also be active aerodynamics, meaning the front and rear wings will move based on what the driver wants. These are fundamental changes to how Formula One cars work. The sport is essentially reinventing itself for 2026. Lance Stroll from Aston Martin has been pretty direct about his feelings. He called the new regulations a bit sad in terms of the driving experience. He said it's sad that the cars will go 400 kilometers an hour down the straights, but only half that speed through the corners. He explained that managing energy and battery power is not as exciting as pushing a car to its limits with lots of downforce. But here's the thing. He acknowledged that all the drivers agree on this. He also said that if Aston Martin is super quick, those complaints will probably go away. That's an important caveat. If you're winning, you don't complain as much about the car. Stroll's perspective shows that the driving experience matters to these professionals. Charles Leclerc from Ferrari has also been critical. He said the 2026 car is not the most enjoyable race car I've driven so far. He explained that the regulations for next year are going to be probably less enjoyable to drive, but he also said there's a challenge in it, and he wants to maximize a very different car. So while he's not a fan right now, he's not completely dismissing it either. He hopes the car will evolve and improve over the next few months. That's a balanced perspective from Leclerc. He's not saying the regulations are terrible, he's saying they're different, and he's not sure he likes them yet. Coming from someone who will be driving these cars, that's significant feedback. Max Verstappen has been more cautious. He said he's in the middle about the new regulations. Maybe they'll be good, maybe they'll be bad. He said he's very open-minded about it. When he sits in the car next year, he'll figure it out. He also pointed out that he's not making the rules anyway, so even if he has concerns, it's not going to change anything. That's a pragmatic approach from Verstappen. He's not going to waste energy complaining about something he can't control. His measured response contrasts with some of the more critical voices. Fernando Alonso, Stroll's teammate, had an interesting take. He said he prefers not having to use his brain 200% to win races. He'd rather just win with pure pace and have a 20-second gap to second place. He acknowledged that energy deployment could create unexpected results, but he's not thrilled about having to think so much while racing. That's a pretty honest statement from a two-time world champion. He's saying that the cerebral side of racing isn't what he enjoys. He wants to drive fast, period. It's a perspective that shows how different drivers approach the sport. Esteban Ocon from Haas made a pretty dramatic comparison. He said the difference between the current F1 cars and the 2026 cars is like jumping from an F1 car to a rally car. That's how different he thinks it will be. He acknowledged there will be much bigger issues to tackle initially, and there's going to be a lot of testing and new things to learn. That comparison really puts things in perspective. If a professional driver thinks the difference is that dramatic, you know something significant is happening. The rally car comparison has become one of the most quoted descriptions of the 2026 changes. Lewis Hamilton has also expressed concerns. He said he's worried that fans won't like the 2026 cars. He's concerned about drivers having to downshift or coast to conserve battery. He said there's not a single thing he'll miss about the current generation of cars. He hasn't enjoyed them. Coming from a 7-time world champion, that's a pretty strong statement. Hamilton is known for being thoughtful about these things, so his concerns carry weight. His perspective on fan enjoyment is also important because the sport ultimately depends on viewers. Now, the team principals have a different perspective. Toto Wolff from Mercedes pointed out that if you ask any driver what they want, they'd say they want a naturally aspirated V12 with maximum grip and power. That's just what drivers love. But we're in a different era now. He believes the fans need to enjoy watching Formula One, and the sport needs to stay true to itself as a high-performance competition. That's a fair point from Wolff. The sport has to balance what drivers want with what's good for the sport overall. His perspective shows the tension between driver preferences and broader sporting goals. James Vowles from Williams told Leclerc that it gets better as development continues. He doesn't think the formula is bad, just different, but he is concerned about one thing. He's worried about how they'll get overtaking to work properly with the new regulations. That's a real issue that needs to be sorted out. Overtaking is crucial to good racing, so if the new regulations make it harder to pass, that's a legitimate concern. Vowles' comments suggest that even team principals who are optimistic about 2026 have specific worries. Jonathan Wheatley from Sauber made an interesting point. He said all these concerns were raised at the start of the current regulations too. But look at where we are now. We just had the closest championship in the history of the sport. So maybe the drivers will adapt, and the racing will still be good. That's a valid perspective. Sometimes the doom and gloom predictions don't come true. Historical precedent suggests that the sport has a way of making new regulations work. The thing is, this isn't the first time drivers have complained about new regulations. In 2009, when the chassis rules changed completely, drivers complained. In 2022, when the ground effect cars were introduced, drivers complained. It's a pattern. Drivers always complain about new regulations. Then they adapt, and the racing usually turns out fine. That historical context is important. It suggests that the concerns, while legitimate, might not be as catastrophic as they sound, but there are some legitimate concerns. The overtaking situation is still unclear. The energy management system needs to be figured out, and the cars are still going to be too heavy, even though the minimum weight is dropping from 800 kilograms to 768 kilograms. That's only a 32 kilogram reduction, and drivers would like to see much lighter, more nimble cars. These aren't just complaints for the sake of complaining. They're real technical issues that need solutions. The reality is that the 2026 regulations are going to be different. They're going to require a different driving style. Energy management will be more important. The cars will be faster on the straights and slower through the corners. It makes sense that drivers are expressing their concerns. But it's also important to remember that drivers always adapt. They always find a way to make the best of new regulations. And the racing usually ends up being good anyway. So while the drivers' concerns are valid, there's also reason to be optimistic about what 2026 will bring to Formula One.